I need to pull it together as we pick up pocket queens in the small blind the very next hand. This is the third interesting hand that I've played back to back to back, and it's the first premium pocket pair that I've gotten. The player in middle position raises to 150. My stack has been completely depleted. It was once a proud 5-figure stack of high society, but now it's been reduced to 36.35. I 3-bet to 500, hoping that it'll look like I'm at the end of my rope after the previous two hands. Really, I'm close to the top of my range. The initial pre-flop raiser asked to see how much I'm playing. I was going to add on for another 5 to 10,000, but I didn't have time since this is the very next hand I was dealt. Part of me wishes that I had a bigger stack since we've got a huge starting hand, but part of me is okay only having about 3,600 because it might be the perfect amount to induce a 4-bet shove from my opponent, either as a bluff with ace-4 or ace-5 suited, or with a hand that he might jam for value that we're actually beating, like jacks or 10s. Middle position player 4-bets to a smaller amount of 1,400 isn't going to stay that price for long.
One.
All in. Call.
Show. Alright.
The opponent shows pocket aces. I've run really well at Grayton over the course of my life, but it looks like that could be coming to an end as I might potentially lose my third all-in pot in 3 hands. When I said alright, that was me acknowledging it's clearly not my day, and I'm going to call it quits if I lose this. Going back to the end of the tournament, I've chopped 1 all-in and lost 4. I really don't want to make it 5. I don't have much hope though, especially as the flop comes out 9-5-3.
Good thing I didn't rebuy.
With 2 cards to come, 2 queens left in the deck, and a backdoor spade draw, I've got about a 1 in 8 chance of winning. It's looking bleak, but the door isn't closed shut on us yet. In fact, there may be just enough room for a little magic.
Oh, wow. Want to run twice?
Bad thing I didn't rebuy.
Want to run twice?
No thanks, I'm okay.
How much you got?
This is 2.
We drill a miracle 2-outer in a pot over $7,000 to get a full double up. I was feeling low and really ready to just head back to the hotel room stuck 10,000, but instead, some life gets pumped back into us. I'm still down 2,700, but I feel like I'm up 5K. Yeah, I absolutely got lucky, but I'm not going to squander the opportunity to remain in the game. I'm reinvigorated and ready to build on the momentum. Sometimes you can feel it when things are just beginning to go your way, and that's certainly the feeling that I've got right now. It's time for another bomb pot. Every player puts in $100 each. We're playing 7-handed at the moment. If we win, we'll have gotten all the way out of the $6,400 hole that we were in. We look down at pocket queens in the big blind. It's normally one of the worst times to pick up a premium pocket pair because, like I said earlier, 1 pair hands rarely win at showdown in bomb pots when there are so many opponents, so you typically have to improve to 2 pair or better. And we do. The dealer puts out Queen Queen 9 Rainbow. We flop quads with 700 in the middle and not a damn worry in the world. I've never had quads in a bomb pot before, certainly not during a high stakes session. The only concern of mine is how are we possibly going to get paid when we've got everything. Small blind checks. There's no way that we'll be betting when I'm second to act and all the queens are accounted for. I check, hoping someone will get out of line. No one bites, it checks around. The turn is the 8 of spades, at least putting a flush draw on the board and completing a possible straight. The small blind checks. I'm a patient guy. I can't let this check through again though. I make a small bet of 200 to get things going. I wouldn't be too surprised if this folds around. I actually think it's the most likely outcome. All hope isn't lost. Rob takes 2 black chips from his stack and calls in middle position. The hijack and cutoff fold. The button, who we've tangled with multiple times, is considering his options. I told you earlier he makes aggressive plays at strange times. This would be amazing if he raised here. I don't want to do anything that might tip him off that we've got the absolute nuts. Still, in my head I'm thinking, please do something wild. He comes through and raises to 1,100. This seems like a bluff since we've got all the queens. I don't know if he'd raise with a straight on this board, or maybe he has 9s full or 8s full. The small blind folds. I was originally thinking that I may not get any customers with my $200 bet. Now that I've gotten called and then raised, I'm thinking about the best way to stack 1 or maybe even 2 players. There's no reason to risk scaring anyone off. We don't need to re-raise for protection. I flat the 1,100. Rob can't justify calling for 900 more. He folds. It's down to heads up with a guy who I know is capable of taking huge risks if he sees an opportunity to win a pot. It's the perfect setup. The river is the 7 of clubs. It doesn't change much since Jack 10 was already a straight. The button has exactly 5,000 left in his stack. We have him covered. The pot is only 3,100, so it could be tough to get everything. I don't want to risk this checking through since it's highly likely that the opponent is bluffing and may shut down after I called his raise on the turn with another player behind me. I put out a fake blocker bet of 600 to appear as if I'm weak and trying to get to showdown cheaply. I've already seen multiple times today, including earlier in this hand, that the opponent has no aversion to raising. We just need him to take the bait here. If he has air like a missed flush draw, he may make a last-ditch effort to try and steal the pot after seeing a weak-looking bet. If he has a really strong hand like a full house, or possibly even a straight, he'll probably think that I have trick queens and he can raise for value. Almost no matter what he has, he'll feel some inclination to make it more. He takes the black chips that he's shuffling in his hand, adds it to a much larger stack of black chips, and then raises to 2,600. I don't play these stakes that often, it's tough to flop quads, and even more rare to get raised twice in the same hand while having the absolute nuts. This is an unbelievable feeling. Let's just take a second to enjoy this and hit the like and subscribe buttons. We've made the maximum. Yes, the button still has another 2,400 in his stack, but there's no way that he can call a shove even if he has pocket nines for what we know is the second nuts, because it's too likely that I'll have queen 9, queen 8, or queen 7 for a better full house, and I wouldn't bluff or re-raise with anything worse. Still, we have to go for it. I put in the inevitable all-in re-raise for 5,000 effective. The button can't believe it. He must not have been raising as a bluff on the river because he doesn't snap fold. I get the sense that he knows he's beat. He's got to see it though. He tosses in a calling chip. We've officially made the most that we could possibly make. We never find out what the opponent had. It must have been either Jack 10, pocket 9s, or pocket 8s. They're all pretty similar in this instance because they don't beat the hands that I'm representing. It's an insane $13,000 pot that comes our way. Earlier on, it seemed like I was destined to lose every chip that I had in front of me. I was stuck several $1,000s and a favorite to be down 10,000. We got some magic in two separate hands with pocket queens to now be up 6,000 on the session. The day is completely turned around. It isn't over either. Right away, I'm dealt pocket queens in the big blind. Under the gun +1, who's first to act, opens to 120. His range should be narrow. I have the third best hand, yet I still don't feel comfortable 3-betting over an early position raiser. He can call and put me in a ton of tough spots. He's a very good pro who knows that I don't normally play these stakes. I call, hoping that this approach doesn't backfire. The flop comes 8-3-3 with 2 hearts. It's about as safe as it gets without making a set. I check to the pre-flop raiser. He might have something. He down bets to 100. I don't want to scare him off if he has air. He could just be drawing to 3 or even fewer outs. I call the 100. The turn is the 7 of clubs. I'm glad it's an undercard to my high pair. I check. The opponent keeps the heat on. He bets 360. I've under-repped my hand by flatting pre-flop and on the flop. This has caused me to be flying somewhat blind. I'm probably ahead, but after facing 2 bets, I can't help but wonder if maybe I'm up against a better overpair or maybe even a full house. There's no way that I'm ever folding. I call. I could still be up against a hand like jacks, 10s, or 9s. The river is the jack of clubs. One of those hands we were previously beating is now crushing us. 10-9 suited also got there to make a straight. I check to either induce a bluff from missed hearts or keep the pot small in case I'm up against a better hand. No check back from the opponent. He bets 800. As soon as the bet hits the felt, I grab a chip to make the call. The player has one of the hands that I was hoping he'd have. He shows pocket 10s. I turn over the pocket queens. I have a hand that he definitely didn't think that I had. For him to go 3 streets of value, he must have thought that I had an 8 other than jack 8 suited. Under-repping my hand goes well for the most part. I win a decent pot in the first few minutes at the table. Although, given the exact hand that I was up against, I probably would have won more if I 3-bet or check raise flop. Just like that, I'm already up 1,300 in addition to the 1,100 that I won earlier in 5-10. Pocket queens, under the gun +2. Under the gun +1 opens to 120. He's been playing pretty snug. I just flatted with queens pre-flop before when I faced an early position raise. Here I 3-bet to 400. This is going to look super strong. The under the gun straddler is named Ping. He's a great player and great guy. He's assessing the situation and appears to want to get involved in some way. If he called 4 bets after the first 2 players to act raise and 3-bet, he's only going to have hands like aces, kings, and ace-king. Maybe he doesn't even 4-bet ace-king or kings. He calls, which I'm happy to see. Under the gun +1 calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop. I haven't made any sets today in the big game. This would be a great time to hit one. I'm going to need your help to do so. On the count of 3, let's hit that like button for extra run good. Ready? 1, 2, 3, The flop is queen 3 deuce with 2 spades, we have top set, and we're in position in a multi-way 3-bet pot while playing for huge amounts of money. I just want to trap this moment in a jar and come back to it when I'm feeling down because this is special for me. The opponent's check, I've got the best possible hand, and I even have backdoor spades to go with it. Now how do I extract the most value when opponents will probably have a lot of hands like middling pocket pairs? I bet 480 to keep one or both opponents in. Under the gun calls, he could have a hand like ace king or ace jack of spades. He could also have a hand like jacks. Under the gun +1 folds, it's heads up. Maybe I can get a clean run out this time. Nope. The dealer puts out the 7 of spades. Again, I flop the nuts and I get significantly downgraded in a large pot. 3/4 of the queens are accounted for, so a flush draw seemed like the most likely hand that I would have gotten called by on the flop, especially when the opponent called with another player left to act behind him. Under the gun checks, I doubt a hand like jacks or tens can call a second barrel, and I don't want to get check raised again. I check back, the river is the 6 of hearts, realistically doesn't change anything. Under the gun bet's 500, it's a tiny amount that looks a lot like a blocker bet. I don't get the sense that he's doing this with a flush. He's probably doing this to get to showdown with a hand like ace queen of hearts, maybe jacks or tens. There's a tiny chance that I can get extra value from one of those hands if I raise. It'll probably look bizarre after checking back turn, which could allow me to get called lighter. If I get re-raised, it'll be a disaster though. My instincts are telling me that I have the best hand and I can perhaps make a little extra profit by putting in additional money. I went with my instincts by value betting with the flush and the king-jack hand earlier, and I lost the absolute maximum. That hand swirling in the back of my mind, I have to forget about previous bad outcomes, try to make the best decision I can in the moment. I raised to 1700. The opponent has me beat, he might just ship it in my face. That's been happening to me a lot lately. That doesn't appear to be what's going to occur right now. The player thinks that I might have him beat, but he can't find a fold. He puts his calling chips in front of me as if to say, I know you have the winner. I flip over the set, I imagine it's best. I'm so happy because this win would get my stack up over the 17,000 mark. Ping throws the chips that he initially bet river with over my way too. I'm feeling great. Then I realized that he hasn't returned his cards to the dealer yet. I don't necessarily have the winner.
You're not gonna slow roll me, are you?
Ping is a class act and chose pocket king solely for the poker vlog. He didn't have to do that, and it isn't a common thing to do in high stakes, particularly after a large pot doesn't go your way. Ping had the king of spades, so the turn gave him a total of 10 outs. Luckily for us, he didn't hit one, and my raise on the river made me an extra $1,200. I'm only down about 2,800. It's been an incredible comeback session, and it isn't even close to over. Then we pick up pocket queens and hijack. There's a button straddle. The action's on the small blind first. He raises to 40. The big blind calls, and so does the under the gun player. I could go either way between calling and 3-betting, since I imagine the small blind is going to have an extremely narrow opening range with 8 other players to act behind him and being guaranteed to be out of position for the entire hand. Ultimately, I go with a 3-bet to 225. The small blind is an action player, and he's made it clear that he's out to get some Bradley dollars. He makes the call. The big blind and under the gun players both fold. It's heads up in a pot that's already large. The dealer puts out 8-7 deuce with 2 diamonds. The small blind checks. Probably would have gotten 4-bet by aces or kings pre-flop. I should have the best hand. I don't want to see any overcards or any diamonds without making my opponent pay for it. I bet 300. Shortly after I get my chips out there, the small blind announces a raise to 750. I don't see how I can fold. People somehow always have it though. I've got 13-10 total. The opponent has me barely covered. I guess I can't get away from this one. I get snap called, then I hear, that doesn't make me feel too great. Sounds like I could be up against kings. Not to worry, dudes. We drill a queen on the turn for top set. I table it. The river's a 5. We essentially have the nuts. Small blind throws his cards down in frustration. I thought that I might have bad beat him, but it turns out we were ahead the whole time. He has pocket jacks. Our assessment of the situation was correct in that we didn't get 4-bet pre-flop, so we were probably ahead. The dealer gets a count of the chips since we were very even to start the hand. What makes this especially cool is that I look behind me and my dad's standing right there watching. I didn't know he was around, but he happened to stop by to bring me some lunch. He gets to see me win a pot that's over $3,000. It's one of the biggest pots that I've won all year. I couldn't be happier since I was certainly going through a rough patch, particularly in sessions that I've been filming. I'm up 2150 today, but the run good is just getting started. Pocket queens. I'm in middle position. I open to 60. The player with a much larger than average size stack. 3 bets to 200. This is a spot in which I could go either way between 4-betting or flatting. In a game that plays a bit looser, I lean towards 4-betting. Here I flat. We're heads up, out of position. I'm down and not loving the spot. Not to worry though, the flop is queen 10-10. We have a full house and a 3-bet pot. I check to set the trap. I've had about 15 Diet Cokes to help me focus, so I'm trying to keep it all in, but it's tough with how excited I am right now. The hijack down bets to 140. I don't want to scare him off. I call. The turn is the 9 of spades. We still have the second best possible hand. I check again. The opponent increases the sizing to 360. I have about 3,000 total in my stack. What I'm trying to figure out is how I can get all the money in the middle. I put in a small raise to 1,000. Maybe we can get it all in on this street. The opponent calls. Pot will be set up nicely for me to jam river for slightly less than 2,000. Jeff folds and gives me the nice hand pat on the table. I later tell him that I flopped a boat. He's let me know that he had an ace jack of diamonds. We win a nice pot, but we're still stuck. Then we get pocket queens on the button. Under the gun limps in for 5. Under the gun +1, who won the previous hand, raises to 15. The player on my right in the cutoff calls. I have a strong hand, but I don't want to be going 4 or more ways to the flop. I want to narrow down the field. I put in the 3-bet to 65. Under the gun and under the gun +1 both fold. The autobiographer is not letting me win that easily. He calls. We're heads up in position. The dealer puts out queen 9-6 with 2 hearts. We have top set. The opponent checks. It's hard for him to have much on a board like this since I smashed it so hard, just like you should be doing to the like and subscribe buttons right now. I down bet to 50 to give the cutoff a chance to do something silly. The opponent calls very quickly. This is generally a good indicator that the player has a drawing hand. Given the fact that I have top set, it's extremely likely that's the case. The turn is the 10 of spades. It's an interesting card because 3 separate straight draws get there. I expect to see a check. Instead, the opponent bets 175. I have 365 total. I'm never folding. Time to let it ride. Come on.
All in. All in. Call.
There was no hesitation from the cutoff. We may need some help on the river. The dealer puts out the 9 of diamonds. We make a full house. I jammed, so I have to show first. I turn over the queens proudly, thinking that I've got the winner, right? Well, you won't believe it. The other player turns over ace jack of hearts. The opponent flopped a flush draw with 1 over and a backdoor straight draw. He turned an open ender, then bricked it all. After getting stacked right away, we get a big double up. We pick up pocket queens in the cutoff. This is a hand that's included in a lot of pre-flop charts as a raise from this position. I make it 300. The button is a new player. He welcomes himself to the table by 3-betting me to 1,000. I should actually be 4-betting. I call for 700 more. We're heads up out of position and the flop comes queen jack 10 rainbow. We've got top set. This is a very interesting flop because the button is supposed to have 3-bet us pre-flop with 3 different straight combinations including ace king, king 9, and 9-8. He's also going to have hands that we'll have in terrible shape like sets of jacks and 10s and also pocket aces. Kings isn't doing too terrible against us, it's just a 2-to-1 dog. I check. The opponent is a good player, knows that this is a great flop for his range. He bets 700. I have a decision to make. One option is to raise. I might be able to get calls or raises from sets or overpairs. The problem with this is that I could be up against a straight or a bluff. If I'm up against a straight, I don't want to put more money in the pot. If I'm up against a bluff, I won't be winning any additional money by raising. I'll just be denying equity, and the opponent may not even have that much or any equity in some cases. I call. This is still risky because we don't want to see 4 to the straight on board. The turn is the 6 of clubs. That's a good safe one. I check. Perhaps I'll go for the check raise if the button bets here. He does bet. He bets 3,000. This is definitely on the larger side. Everything is escalating extremely quickly. I can't help but think that a straight is the most likely hand that he'll have. There are 16 combos of ace king he could have, 4 combos each of king 9 and 9-8 suited. That's a total of 24 combos. Meanwhile, there are only 6 combos of aces, 6 combos of kings, and 3 combos each of pocket jacks and pocket 10s. There's only 1 combo each of hands like queen jack and queen 10 suited as well. I call, hoping for a paired board one time. The river is the jack of spades. We have the second nuts in a pot that's nearly $10,000. The opponent isn't going to like the jack if he has a straight, or even if he has a hand like aces or kings, especially after I called a 3-bet, a flop bet, and a huge turn bet. I don't want to check and have this get checked back. I fire for 10,000. If I get called, I'll win the biggest pot of my life, and I'll be up the most that I've ever been up in a single session before. Instead, the opponent folds, showing that he has the world's worst hand.
Deuce 7.
The opponent was bluffing us the entire way with 7 deuce. What kind of an idiot would lose over $4 grand playing that game? Don't answer that. We've got pocket queens in the big blind. Under the gun, a 3-bet me earlier with king jack suited, opens to 50. He's the short stack at the table. I'm already contemplating how I'm going to absorb those chips into my stack and get unstuck. It's my turn to 3-bet him. Tossed out 2 black chips. It's fun using those again. The fact that I just 3-bet a few hands earlier may allow me to get called lighter. One of the added benefits about 3-betting light is that you gain extra value when you 3-bet your premium hands like quickities. Wouldn't mind getting this in here. Instead, the opponent calls, leaving himself with 350 behind. I imagine that I'm not up against aces, kings, or ace king, otherwise he might have 4-bet jammed, although with stack sizes, I actually like flatting in position with aces or kings if I'm him. Anyway, we're heads up. The flop is king, king, deuce with 2 spades. I've already mentioned that I think it's unlikely that I'm up against ace, king. There shouldn't be too many other combos that I'll have containing a king once I 3-bet so large pre-flop. Probably still ahead, but how do we keep hands that we're dominating to continue to put money in? Do that by betting very small. I make it 100, it's a quarter pot. I'll probably get called by any pocket pair and even some ace highs, especially ones with backdoor spades. The opponent immediately checks his cards for a spade. I doubt he'd do that if he had 2 spades. I don't think he'd check his cards if he had trip kings either. He looks for a very long time. He doesn't seem even the slightest bit confident. He just doesn't want to fold getting 5-1 on a call. Eventually, he puts out some orange chips to stick around, confident that I have him beat based on the action so far and my opponent's body language. The turn is the 3 of spades, not a great card since I don't have a spade in my hand. Under the gun only has 250 left in the stack. I slide in enough to cover him and announce that I'm all in. I don't get snapped, so that's good news. Under the gun sees how big the pot is compared to the bet, tosses in a chip to make the call. The river is another king. We make a full house. I table the hand. Under the gun isn't very happy or very surprised to see that he doesn't have the winner. He tosses cards into the muck. We lured him in with small bets, and we got his entire stack just like we planned. No longer are we in Stuckville. We're up 450 on the session. We've got pocket queens in the under the gun straddle. The cutoff raises to 60. The button calls. We'll be going for a sizable 3-bet. We've got 2 opponents and we'll be playing from out of position. If we were in position, I'd make it 4 times the initial raise size. Since we're not, I make it 300, which is 5 times the initial raise size. The cutoff is strong enough to hang around. He calls. The button folds. It's down to heads up. The flop comes jack 6-6 with 2 hearts. We've got an overpair with a backdoor flush draw. We can't allow the cutoff to see a free card. I bet 400 for value and protection. A part of me is concerned that the opponent could have pocket jacks as he makes the call. The turn is the ace of spades. The board is getting even worse for us. We could have been up against the ace high flush draw or a hand like ace jack, ace queen, or ace king even. I check. I don't see the opponent bluffing very often in this situation, so if he bets, I'll fold. Instead, he checks back. Maybe he has a hand like pocket tens or maybe ace queen. The river is the queen of diamonds, giving us a full house. Just when we thought we were done, the deck pulls us right back in it. The most likely hands that I put the opponent on are hands that can either call a big bet, like ace king, ace queen, and other ace high flush draws that made top pair, or hands that can't really call a bet of any amount, like pocket pairs below a jack. We may as well target the hands that can call a big bet. I take out a handful of black chips and bet 1100. The cutoff doesn't like this one bit. He's trying to piece a story together that we're telling with how we played the hand so far. Honestly, we'll have a lot of strong holdings. I probably would have checked turn with pocket aces as well. I actually wish we were bluffing here because a bluff would put the opponent in a tough situation with a lot of hands that he might have gotten to the river with. The cutoff doesn't seem to want to fold. He must have something with value. After a minute, the cutoff finally calls. We show him that we've got a monster. It's good. We win a big pot from the cutoff, who would later say that he had ace-10 of diamonds. This opponent happened to randomly buy 20% of my action when I got 4th in the $5,000 tournament at the Poker Go studio a few months ago for $58,500, so he immediately made over 5 figures from us at that point. It's nice to see a decent chunk of that money get returned.